dad's brother's a pastor, my mom's brother's a pastor, and my mom's dad, my other grandfather, was a pastor, which made me never,
Wow.
ever want to be a pastor.
That's a lot of
I'm
pastors.
just telling you.
Hello, it gives me great joy to welcome you to the Planted Podcast, a place where discipleship takes root. I'm here with some amazing pastors. We have good conversations around discipleship together, and now we're taking these conversations and involving you together. Would you introduce yourselves, friends?
I'm Darren Thurber from Calamasa Church.
Randy Roberts, Loma Linda Church.
Hi, Manny Vitag. I'm with the Filipino SDA Church.
Hello, Iki Taimi from the La Sierra University Church.
And I'm Tara Van Cross from the Azure Hills Church. And we've had some really amazing conversations together as we've gotten together as pastors in this area in Southern California and collaborated together towards a discipleship Sabbath, which is coming September 27. But before we get there, we want to have some conversations together. And many times we see pastors preaching, we see each of us having these conversations, teaching, preaching. But how did we get there? What is our own discipleship journey? So could we start with our roots? Who invested in you? What did discipleship look like in your own life and story?
I know this probably sounds cliche, but I had to start with my parents. My dad is a pastor. My mom is a pastor. I probably should just say my whole family, because my grandfather also was a pastor. Grandfather's brother was a pastor. My dad's brother's a pastor. My mom's brother's a pastor. And my mom's dad, my other grandfather, was a pastor, which made me never, ever want to be a pastor.
That's a lot of pastors.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not because I didn't think like it was a good, like, oh, I couldn't, like it was a bad job or whatever. But you look at those, I would look at those family members and think God could never use me that way. I have no business doing that kind of work. But I just think that growing up around that family, especially with my parents, my favorite pastor is my dad and favorite preacher is my dad, always will be. And I think just very simply, the greatest gift they gave me was showing that there is no better life than a life with Jesus. And I don't know if I could pick a particular moment, but I think that's something from especially my parents that I picked up on. But there was one person in particular, especially when I was really sensing a call to ministry. And I don't know if any of you know Ron Piquel, who pastors up in Northern California at Berkeley Church. And he is sort
Sure
of,
do.
yeah, he has sort of taken the mantle for the North American division, really, for the past 20, 25 years for public campus ministry. And I went up to, I'll try to keep this short, but I went up to San Francisco State University to study music as a master's degree. Even though I knew that God was calling me to ministry, I was trying to continue to push that away and do something else, and ended up going to the Berkeley Church and was a public campus student. And Ron was very instrumental in my time in Northern California. And then when I went to do that work for the Ohio Conference, he had, and it was just all that something that he initiated. He would set a time every week to call and pray with me, to mentor me on leading out in small groups, leading out in preaching. And he did that for a good year and a half. And he is busy as all get out. And so really grateful for Ron's mentorship. And he was a big person in my life that discipled me.
My experience is somewhat similar to Darren, so I kind of followed him since he's a lot older than I am. But my parents as well. My dad was a pastor, and he and my mom were missionaries and in ministry. And without any question, they were the ones that had the most formative influence on me. Like Darren said, it kind of feels like a cliche answer, but it's not. It's just the simple truth. That was so important. But then there have been others along the way, many of them pastors, though not all, that have had a profound influence on my life and for whom I'm very grateful. So when I think about discipleship and growth, I think about key individuals. I was reading this morning in Dietrich Bonhoeffer's book, Life Together, just how important the community, the fellowship is, the other people that we follow Christ beside, just how important they are to us. And so I started today kind of thinking about that, and this matches it. For me, discipleship was people. Those people were often, but not exclusively, pastors. Sometimes they were teachers. On occasion or two, they were a boss, but really important people in my life for whom I'm profoundly grateful.
Mm,
Oh, that's beautiful.
that's powerful.
Actually, mine's a little bit different. I am like a Timothy. It was my grandmother. I have to say that my parents were were not practicing Adventist. My dad was Catholic. My mom was an Adventist walking backwards. Uh, but it was my grandmother who really poured into me. And it funny story. She was when I was a little kid. My mother said, when we get to America, we were in the Philippines. When we get to America, we're going to try to get as far away from Adventist as possible. And, the family that picked us up was an Adventist family. A family that allowed us to stay in their home for a month was an Adventist family. My dad ended up finding a job at Glendale Adventist Medical Center, and in front of us was a pastor family, and beside us was the pastor family. We were surrounded. We could not get away. And it was funny that they loved on my parents like they've never been loved on before.
Mm.
But the one distinct person that really made an impact on my life was a 70-something retired Filipino pastor. He was a youth director when he was younger in the Philippines. He was 70-something, all pure white hair. And I remember this guy would pick me up, bring me to Pathfinders and stuff like that. And he was the first one who taught me how to hit a tennis ball, shoot a bow and arrow, hit a golf ball and everything. And I remember saying to myself, when I grow up, I was 12 years old. When I grow up, I want to be just like him.
Mm.
And today I really don't dye my hair because I want to be all white, just like him. But he ended up marrying me when he was in his 80s, and then he passed away. And it reminded me of the impact of what intergenerational mentorship and discipleship can be like in our lives, right? And like Randy, along the way, there's been lots of pastors, been through the journey that has began to shape that. But looking back, I was going to say that this is the one person that significantly changed the course of what I wanted to do and wanted to become growing up.
Mm,
Yeah, that's
Cool.
beautiful.
That's
Beautiful.
amazing.
Wow. And I can't
tell
tell
you,
you dye your hair.
You don't want to
Andy?
be around Dad?
I need some right here. You know what's interesting about that question of roots, and thank you, Tara, for asking and giving us the opportunity to share a bit of our own personal journeys, because most times people hear us from the platform, but they don't know what was the impetus of how we got to this place, where we're coming from. I grew up, so we moved to the United States in the early '80s, and we were undocumented we were an undocumented family, and my both of my parents are generational Adventists. But coming here, it was a small church that took us in, and they
mm,
loved us deeply. And when we needed to go to a school, they helped us get into our little Adventist school in the area, and the little Adventist school loved us, and the pastor there just showed up, and was a huge presence in our life. And even to the point where we were much older and we were going to our court dates for stuff. Called my dad. Hey, do you need me to show up? I'm showing up, right? And so I think
Wow.
about like what it means to have roots. It really is the sacred work of presence. It's not cool
Hmm.
music or, awesome trends or, hey, what are we all doing to like get around the curve of the next thing? It's about being present.
Yes.
Those
Mm.
who dig down deep and get connected to spaces, and that space connects back, and there's a commitment to do life together. It's
Mhm.
transformative. And so for me, I'm in the church today, loving the church. We didn't have a really cool youth program. It was, the lady was like 700 years old. I'm pretty sure was our, was our youth lady, right? And so when I finally became a young adult and I started ministry, we church planted out in LA, and she showed up. She showed up to this place, and she
Wow.
came and she sat in the worship services, and she would be there. And let me tell you, the music we were doing was not her music. the the
Mm.
the vibe of that space was not her vibe, but she was committed to showing up
Mhm.
for who she called me her son, and she used to say, Icky, I never thought you would have become a pastor because you were so shy and so quiet as a child. um, what
Hmm.
what happens to us when our local communities and we show up for each other and get committed? Those kind of roots I think really matter for the longevity and the sustainability of our faith and who we become.
That's deeply formative. What an amazing thing to have such presence consistently showing up in your life. I'm hearing such themes of that are all relational, and that's true in my own life too. Those relationships are what kept me rooted. I don't have parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles who are pastors. I actually had both of my parents converted when they were really young, got together, and then they got pregnant with me and left the church.
Mm.
So I wasn't raised in the church. I didn't have anyone that was intentionally bringing me to church. I was actually exposed to a lot. I grew up in the Seattle area, and so I was exposed to a lot of different things there. But my mom let me go to vacation Bible school, and
Mhm.
so I first have memories of where I got my first children's Bible and where I was someone up front was talking about praying. And though it was just that one week, I remember praying and reading my Bible and connecting with God all throughout the year, throughout my childhood, even though it was just during that summer that I had exposure. And so the relational roots started, and I had other times I went to church with friends, but the most significant impact where I had someone pouring into me was when I started to connect with the Adventist Church, and God led me there. Pastor Cindy Chooch was a major part of investing in my life and discipling me. And I had other teachers and pastors. Pastor Lee Venden at the time was there at the Academy Church. So as I came in as a high schooler, the image that stuck with me is that Lee said, "Hey, come be a part of this church board," and he pulled out us next to him and said, "Come join me here." So in all of the ministry or in the prayer or in leading, like Pastor Cindy was encouraging me to do, um, it was come join me in this. I see it in you. Come be a part of it with me. So it was really grounded in relationship, which I hear as a theme for all of us with these roots that we've had. And sometimes people, especially this is the hazard of being up front, and all of us preach consistently in a lot of different spaces. People can think that we have it all figured out, but this discipleship is a lifelong journey. So I'm wondering if we'd be willing to share um, how is it that God has discipled you through pain, through the seasons in your life where the church didn't feel like a safe place? Because many that's when our when those relationships are broken or when pain comes. How is it that God has discipled you through some of those more difficult moments of your journey?
Yeah, for me, it has been first and foremost my wife, my spouse. Anita knows some of the really difficult and deeply challenging times, some of the dark times better than anyone else.
Hmm.
I have often thought I would not still be doing what I'm doing were it not for her. So that to me is an easy answer in terms of the top person there. My spouse has been a journey uh, with me on the journey, has been a part of the journey, and I'm so grateful for her. Then there have been some other key people, friends, with whom I've shared deeply and consistently. And so it's been the people again, just like it was being discipled, it was the people. Now getting through some of the dark times, some of the hard times, it's also been the people.
Mine's a little bit of a different path. 13 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer,
Mm.
and that was a real deep moment when you go from 200 pounds down to 150 pounds. When um, when people don't think that you're going to make it, right? But during that time, like you, Randy, I think my wife being there every day, just an amazing thing. Where I would tell her to go home, and she goes, "No, this is where I want to be."
Hmm.
Oh,
And then I had a prayer partner who would come every day from work, and he would come every day after work, and I told him, "Hey, you've got better things to do with your time. You don't need to be here." And he says, Manny, I can't think of a better place I'd rather be than. And I began to realize that we're blessed if
Hmm.
God brings to us one or two or three special people that can really walk along us in the journey. And today, it's interesting that I get a chance to minister to a lot of people who are going through cancer and pain, and I can let them know that, hey, you know what? God is able, that God is there, that even through the pain, we could be thankful because it allows us to know that we're alive. So different things, different people, but that definitely was a part of my life that I don't thank God for, but I'm thankful because it really changed me and the way I do ministry.
We're
Hmm.
we're glad you got
thank you
through
for
that.
sharing that.
Yeah,
Powerful.
powerful.
So grateful.
Mm. So this is an interesting question as well, Tara. Um, in my situation may be a little bit unique from others, even my own siblings, but the church has never felt unsafe for me. And it's
Hmm.
been a place where, we grew up in a very small church, which either, if you grow up in a very small church, it can either be really good or just toxic. And it was a good place. It was a good place full of old people who cared about us. And so, we lived out a lot of our life in that space. And even when things got challenging and difficult, to be honest, my anchors were my parents. My dad has an optimistic hope that I just don't think there's any force in the universe that could dim. And my mom has a very strong sense of direction about what she wants and what she believes in her kids. So we've always had a real sense of security. And the church was the overspill of our family life because we were doing church stuff when we weren't in church. We were doing our everyday worships, and we were confessing ourselves to each other. In fact, in our family worships, my mom always cried in prayer, and I think my dad knew
Hmm.
that he needed to have worship every day in order that she might forgive him for whatever issues
Hmm.
to tick her off about, right? So like there's this experiential like carrying of our burdens together in our nuclear family, in our local family, that we also saw in our church body, that little church body of people that kept coming with us and kept loving us and kept being there for us in all of our challenges and issues.
I think as I thought through this, it's amazing to me how each of us come from different places, I have, and I want to give voice to those who felt like the church is unsafe.
Mm.
There have been seasons, especially as a woman in ministry, where it hasn't felt
Mm.
safe to me. And so, for whatever reason, if someone listening hasn't felt like the church is a safe place, I've been in that place before. What God has
Mm,
done is been so faithful to provide relationships that have
Mm.
been a part of carrying me through. That's been the most significant. My spouse, like Randy just said, my husband is has been such an amazing gift and knows the journey. Colleagues, friends, uh, other people, mentors, just at the right time. So I think the way that God has communicated to me is saying, you know, I see you. I will
mm,
provide. And so if someone happens to be in that space where you're feeling in that way, reaching out and asking God to provide, asking God to connect you with someone in relationship will be pretty vital. I'm wondering if for us, as we've gone through this journey, some of us a few decades, some of us a little bit more in ministry, how has your understanding of discipleship shifted and grown as you've lived and been a part of ministry? What has shifted for you over the years?
I think for me, one of the key shifts, and like we were saying earlier about another dynamic in discipleship, what I'll say next sounds pretty trite, but it honestly is not. It's the reality of what has been true for me. I think one of the big shifts has been from my head to my heart, whereas in my early years, so much of it was about what I believed, what I could assent to,
mm,
what I affirmed as being doctrinally orthodox or correct. I'm not suggesting that those are unimportant, but that's not for me any longer where the heart of it is. It really has moved into much more of a heart space where it has to do with many other realities. It has to do with the texture and quality of relationships. It has to do with a sense of alignment with God and His will for my life and hopefully for my church community's life. It has to do with harmony in relationships, trying to find deeper notes of harmony, being unwilling to live as much with dissonance and conflict and those kinds of things. So I think for me, that has been an important shift over the years.
You know, I'm a task list guy, creating all this task list every day and try and the day before trying to see, okay, what are all the things that you've got to accomplish the next day. But it's funny. Um, if you've never tried this, try this one time. A friend of mine told me, a colleague of mine said, "Hey, have you ever asked Chat GPT to tell you about yourself?" And so I
Oh
actually
no.
did. It
To tell
was
you what, Manny?
to tell you about yourself, right?
Oh.
It was
That's
scary.
scary.
It
Yeah.
it it told about me more than I thought it would know, just based on the way it did. And then at the end of it, I asked, what are some things that I can do, right, to be better as a pastor? And what it said was kind of eye-opening. He says, Pastor, based on all the things that I chat with you about, you could be too busy for the God that you are working for. Could
mm,
you imagine chat telling you that? And what would be really helpful is to make sure that you carve out space and time. What a great reminder that in spite of everything that we have to do, it's so critical to carve out that extended space for God where we can don't think about our task list. And I'm just going to be honest as a pastor. Sometimes even doing your devotion in the morning feels like a checklist. Like, oh, I got to do this. This is how I start my day. Right. But the opportunity to just pause, take 3, 4 a day where you could just really uh, be with God has saved my ministry, because I think what it does is it allowed me to recalibrate. Uh, from what all the things I'm doing and get a chance to hear what God is really trying to lead in my life. So that's been my saving thing for me, Sarah.
Hmm. I think one of the big understandings about discipleship that has changed for me over the years has been that discipleship is more about asking good questions than trying to bring the right answers. Um, I feel like Jesus is our example here for how he operated with people. I know I'm talking to a bunch of pastors, so I'm sure you know all this already. But some people have added up. Jesus only directly answered a handful of questions with an answer, but he asked, hundreds of questions. I think over 300 questions, and even answered a lot of questions with a question. So I think that we've talked a lot about presence today, and how formative that was for us. And I think about those people who were present with me that just really took a genuine interest in listening, asking good questions. And I'm trying to do that better as a pastor. Oftentimes I think we might feel um, like it's our responsibility to bring good answers. But Jesus asked way more questions than he gave answers. And I think that's a really valuable thing for discipleship.
Thank you so much for sharing that. As we head towards the close of our conversation for today, I'm wondering if you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Oh, I'll jump in here. If I could tell my younger self something, what that would be gracious with yourself.
Mm.
Mm.
There's enough time for all things. And I feel like when I was younger, it was like, man, I've got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do it right. And if I mess up right here, my life is over. Like everything was on a lightning rod in that moment. And when it struck, if I didn't do it just right, the world would end. People would not recognize me. I'd not forgiven. I'd be shunned for an eternity. And I think as I look back, how much more life I would have been able to actually fully experience if I was just gracious with myself. If I figured out how to love
Mm.
myself the way that God loved
Mm,
me. If I was able to let things go the way God lets things go. If I was able to be gracious and kind and recognize that in the trajectory of life, in the arc of life, God makes us and remakes us and remakes us again.
Mm.
That's for me. I would tell myself that.
I say read more, listen more, talk less.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think for me it would be intentional on the time that you spend with God, family, and those that matter. One thing I began to realize, just going back, when I was in bed and thought that maybe my time was going to be cut off, it's interesting that your priorities begin to shift to see what's really most important. And all of a sudden, all the things that I thought was important for church didn't become number one. But I asked myself, have I spent enough time with those that mattered? Have I done the things that really matter? And I think if I could start all over again, it's that being intentional, make space and time for those things that truly, the people that matter to you. I mean, this whole thing today is about relationship, right? So be intentional on that.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I would tell my younger self one thing would be it's not about you. Not that I was arrogant as a young pastor, but I think, and this may shock you, but I am a millennial. I'm an old millennial, right? But I am a millennial. Um,
I am too.
and uh, and of course, we hear all kinds of statistics about um, young people and the trends for how they're interacting with church, and that I definitely heard that a lot as a youth, as a young adult. Millennials, man, they're the problem, and they're hard to reach, and they're not coming to church. And I just thought, I'm going to be a millennial pastor, and I'm going to bring all these people back into church, and it just didn't work that way. So I think that's what I would tell my younger self, it's not about you. And then I think I would also tell myself,
No.
God's got you. You know, very similar to kind of what you were saying, Icky. Uh, God's also got you when you're discouraged and when you're making mistakes along the way and when you're trying to do your best. And it's not always good enough. God's got you.
That's good.
I was thinking about what I would say to myself as a younger person. Trust the process. Trust the
Mm.
process. Because as I look through and look back the journey, some parts of it I controlled, like I could choose, and some parts I couldn't choose, like losing one of my parents to cancer and my husband's mom to cancer, and
Mm.
the miscarriages and the relationship with the church, the things that were happening with the church, all of those things affected my discipleship journey, but I couldn't control those. But even in the midst of all of it, my formation wasn't up to me. Um, there was someone I was trusting with uh, all of this, and there was someone who was holding me in all of it, and I was loved. And that's true today too. So trusting the process that God is working in my life. It's
Beautiful.
it's been really such a gift to hear more of your story. I feel like we could have gone on for a long time sharing more because God's work in us has been rich. That's why we are standing here today, is because of the grace and the goodness of God in our lives. So I thank you for taking some time to share just a little bit. I know we could have gone even further. Next week, we'll talk even more about this. We'll discuss the relationship with the church and how it's changing and how that affects our discipleship. So you won't want to miss that. But until then, until we're together again, we encourage you to get connected, get planted, and grow deeper. And we really hope you'll be together with us September 27 in your church where we can get connected together.